Good morning, everyone. I think we'll start, although I'm afraid that most of our panelists are still stuck in traffic. But we have Dr. Anand here with us, and maybe we can begin with some comments from him and make some introductions and give a little overview of what the seminar is about. So on behalf of the PAGE project at CPR and the Forum for Deliberation on Education, I extend a very warm welcome to all of you. Anuradha Dee from CORD and myself, who have been mostly involved in organizing this seminar today, have been quite overwhelmed, in fact, by the response that we've got to the invitations that we've sent out. Clearly, this is an issue that is of importance and concern to many, many people here. So, as a result, we have, not only a large audience, but an excellent panel of speakers, all of whom are, in fact, critically placed in the arena of statistics and education statistics. So we look forward to a day of very stimulating presentations and rich discussions. We have tried to make as much time as possible for that, because I think the need of the hour really is to have conversations across people who are involved both in collection, management and use of data. Almost 2 decades ago, I was involved with the probe survey and report, which most of you might be aware of. It was perhaps the first field level survey of schooling facilities in many states in North India. At that time, it was very hard, in fact almost impossible, to get disaggregated school level data. This is the days before DICE and UDICE. So we didn't really have that kind of data available. We in fact had to rely therefore on NSS, NFHS, census, and also the selected education statistics from MHRD. But we really struggled to compare, validate, and verify across those data sources. Today, the situation is quite different in many ways. We have many more, the scope and coverage of data has increased vastly. DICE, as you're all aware, collects now school level data, which is available in the public domain. Many more indicators have been included. The coverage of schools and households has increased greatly. MHRD collects household data as well. Earlier, only school data was collected by MHRD, but now even household data is collected. We have more data, other data sources from non-governmental agencies, also large data sources, whether it is ASER on learning levels, or it is IHDS, the Human Development Survey done by NCAR. Large data sets are now available to us. However, despite this vast increase in the coverage, also in use, despite the fact that even technology has made data management so much easier in a sense, I think there is a basic question that confronts us all, and perhaps is the reason that all of us have assembled here today. And that question relates to the fact of whether all of these improvements have actually led to a change on the ground. To what extent has the data regime in fact contributed to improving the situation of schools on the ground? Has it actually made a difference to the kind of planning processes that we have in place? Has it helped to allocate resources better? Has it actually made a difference to the quality of schools, to the reach of entitlements to the students on the ground? I think these are questions that we are still grappling with today. In fact, it is coincidental that even as we discuss some of these questions here very close by in Delhi, is another very important meeting that is taking place of the new CABE committee. And one of the things that they will be deliberating today, or beginning to deliberate today, is the new education policy. What data sources will they be using? Will the data that they look at actually be meaningful, reliable data? Will it really reflect the reality of schools in India? I think as we stand on the cusp of a new education policy, the question of what the numbers look like, what do they tell, has become extremely important today. And unfortunately, we don't have very good answers to some of these questions. We are still, despite all the advances that have been made, we are still confronting some very, very basic questions. And I think, and I hope today that some of those will be taken on head on. Why is it, for instance, that we still don't have standard definitions and methods of estimation for some of the critical indicators in education? For instance, if you look at out-of-school children, we do not have a definition for what an out-of-school child is. Different data agencies use different sources, or different definitions of what they mean by an out-of-school child. As a result, today, if the CABE was to consider the number of children who are not in school, they don't actually have a ready figure. The NSS latest round will suggest that there are roughly 20 million children that are not in school. The IMRB, which is the MHRD's data source, will show the number to be about 6 million. Which is the accurate figure? How does the government even decide on what basis they will actually be making plans and policies for children in education? Why is it that even today, despite the technological advances, we do not have real-time data on schools and schooling? How can we track what is happening in the schools today? Education, and particularly schools, is a subject that requires real-time data. The time lags that exist could make all the difference to the education life of a child. A year, more than a year, if a child has dropped out or hasn't been attending, could mean the end of his or her education possibilities. We need to have real-time data. It is not that technology doesn't allow that. It does. We are lucky that we live in an age where that is possible. But why is it that in education it is not being used yet? Why is it that we have so many different standards for or different categories of data collected by different agencies? Why isn't there, for instance, a standard age range? We know now from the right to education that 6 to 14 is an important category of students for which there is now a fundamental right and a set of entitlements that come under that right. But all the different data sources use different age categories. You have 7 to 29, you have 5 plus, you have 6 to 14. How is it possible to compare across these and validate and verify data? It's almost impossible to do that. So some of these are questions that why is it, for instance, also that we do not have data available closer to where it could be used more effectively? Why is dissemination of data even today such a problem? DICE is a very extensive database. It is also a database that gives us school level data, so it's disaggregated to the level of the school. But in fact, in a school, DICE data is not available. Why is it that it is not available in a school? Why is it that even at the district level, the district officials struggle with data sources when they're doing their district planning? What are the uses to which we foresee the data to be put, and is it really being fulfilling that purpose? Is there meaningful data being generated that can be put to the use that we envisage that it needs to be put to use? These are some of the questions that we are hoping today will be addressed by our panelists, and I certainly hope that in the discussion more such questions are raised. It is only a kind of an initial meeting or a seminar or a discussion that we have organized. We hope that there will be many more conversations across the different actors, stakeholders that are involved in both the collection and the use of data. I think most of all what is needed is for people who collect and manage data to have more meaningful conversations with those who are actually using the data. At the end of the day, I think there is a fundamental question that we must address. Why are we collecting data? What is it for? Why does NSS collect education data when MHRD is also collecting it? What extra value do these data sources add? And can they have a conversation with each other so that actually they are not duplicating efforts, so that actually we are able to have a more consolidated and meaningful set of data for use within this sector in particular? So once again, I thank all of you for coming here today and braving the traffic jams, etc. I will invite the panelists for the first session and Dr. T.C. Anand, who is the Chief Statistician of India and also Secretary, Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. We are very honored to have him in our midst today, and he will deliver the inaugural address for this meeting today. Dr. Anand, please come to the dais. We also have Dr. Shailendra Sikdal from the UNESCO Institute of Statistics, who has vast experience on the use of data and particularly international comparisons. And I think there are many questions that he has as well of the data collection agencies here. Dr. Sikdal, please join us on the dais. Unfortunately, our other two panelists are not here today, but I'm told they're on their way, so hopefully they will be joining us today in a while. Dr. Anand, may I invite you now first?
Thank you, Kiran. That was a very good setting of stage for a discussion on data. And in my opening remarks, I'll try to complement the statements which you made with some observations of my own. And I hope in your discussions, both in this session and later, some of the issues will be answered. I'm not going to even try to answer also all your questions. My principal point which I would like to start with is we tend to think of data as being independent from the perspective of use which the data is being sought. We sort of think that data is generated independent of what use it is going to be put to. That is actually a misnomer. Different types of uses define data requirements and also how data is therefore generated and collected. Principally, when we think of what are the uses to which data is put, we tend to think of three broad types, or maybe four, but I will, for purposes of my discussion, tend to treat them as three, though there is a slight difference in one category which I'll explain. The first purpose for which we seek data is purposes of description. We want to describe a particular form of reality, and we hunt for data for that. Description is, in one level, the easiest of purposes for which data is sought, and a lot of options exist for the purposes of what measures and approaches you take. Let me give you an example to illustrate the issue at hand. Many years ago, when confronted with the problem of the Indian society, people sought to describe poverty. The earliest approaches would be to piece together information from a vast variety of sources. Maybe the amount which was being paid to daily wage laborers, etc., and estimates of poverty were made from that. In the 60s and the 70s, when initially academics and then the government sought to estimate poverty, they also took the same route. They said, we will make a definition of what we think is the poor. So one definition, for instance, which was constructed was people who don't get enough to eat. A normative criteria was defined on what do we mean by enough. It doesn't matter whether that definition has any real content or not. It was on the face of it for the people who constructed it. For example, when Dandekar and Rath constructed a poverty criteria, it was a norm which appeared reasonable to them, and in the larger community of dialogue, it appeared reasonable, so everybody accepted it. They said, this is what we mean by being enough to eat, and they looked at some data which government had collected for a different purpose. The NSS used to do consumer expenditure surveys. The purpose of the survey was not to measure poverty. The purpose of the survey was to generate estimates of consumption of different goods and services which were fed into the national accounting system and also fed into the input-output tables which were being generated for the planning commission, which had then been set up. That is why the original and continues to be a major source of reason for why the consumer expenditure surveys are being carried out. But the surveys made available a data on household consumption, which fitted in with the sort of idea with Dandekar and Rath and subsequently the planning commission had in mind about a normative idea of what poverty was about. And they said, all right, based on this normative thing and this survey, such proportion of India is poor. It was a reasonable descriptive exercise. Similar efforts took place in other descriptive arenas and continue to be done. A lot of the estimates which you talk about in the field of education came about from similar exercises. NSS, as part of its household surveys, does a house listing exercise and there is a household block in every survey. The household block goes over the members of the household, enumerates their attributes as responded by a respondent. So you know how many of them, for example, have been to school, how many of them have been to college and so on and so forth, it permits you to get an estimate of certain categories. In what manner? So schools have certain restrictions, individuals have certain restrictions, government is directed in its own agencies have certain obligations and restrictions, and the manner in which these restrictions will be enforced are also to some extent spelled out in the law. Again, it is not my intention to get into the specifics of any particular law or whether that is adequate for the purposes which it is framed. That's a separate issue. But a policy is framed. Now, we ask for data for purposes of policy. But this is now a very, very different animal from the descriptive purpose which it. There are 2 or 3 elements in this complex animal, and let me try to disentangle them for. The first is data about behavior. When I say that the policy is going to do this and I want data to help me frame the policy, so I must have data which is adequate for me to be able to answer the behavioral question. So if I frame a policy which says government will impose the following restrictions or following incentives or following structures on behavior, I must be able to have a model which tells me this is how behavior takes place and this is how my action is going to influence that behavior. In other words, I want data which enables me to answer the behavioral question. How do people behave? So maybe why do people send children to school? Why don't they send them to school? I should be able to have data to help me answer those behavioral questions. Now, this requirement of data is a lot more complex than my original descriptive requirement. Behavioral requirement imposes that my data may be available over time. Sometimes behavioral things take time to happen, so I need to, for example, if it is a decision on why people send children to school, I may need information about the parameters which help me. If I were to make a descriptive model without data, I may say that people choose on how to be based on their life cycle expectations. If I'm an economist, I'll build you an economics model out of it. Maybe other social sciences will develop it in different ways, but a model will be framed. And in the context of that model, I can then tell you what sort of data is needed. If, again, since my training as an economist, I can tell you, as an economist, if I were to frame the question, what sort of data would have been required, and there are papers which do that. But my requirement for that data then requires much more structured forms of information to be collected. Now, the catch is, and I'll come back to in my closing, often this may or may not be so readily available. That's one. How you solve the problem, I'll leave it. The second problem in policy is not only about understanding behavior. Policy is also about identifying the groups or agents on whom government will exercise its power or give incentives. Let's take again an example away from education. Let me take to the problem of poverty. But the same example can be extended to education. In my first part, I told you about, as a descriptive story, I asked you the question which we were confronted with and continue to confront when we seek to describe India is, what is the magnitude of poverty, to which people made answers which were reasonable normative answers. Now the question of policy came, what can government do to help the poor? Which is now a very different question. Because for this, you need to know who the poor is. I need to be able to turn around and tell you that so and so is poor and so is not poor. Now, this seems like an absurd statement because at one level, each one of us, based on our value systems, can say, I know who the poor are. That's true. Each one of us, in our personal capacities, do make that assessment and do, in fact, answer that questions for ourselves. But the government is not TCA Anand, the government is not each one of you individuals. It is an abstract structure. How does the government know who the poor is? It is not TCA Anand's conception of who the poor is. And I certainly have a problem because my descriptive norm doesn't help me answer this question. Even if you believed that the appropriate criteria is that a person should get enough to eat, which is something which all of us accept, the information which I had is simply inadequate for that purpose. I cannot tell you with any degree of precision which specific household is in fact poor or which specific individual is poor. This is not to talk about poverty, so I'm not going to spend more time on this, but there are attempts made to answer these questions. People have started with the definitional concept of consumption, tried to pose answers for whatever their reason, good, bad. Some of them are reasonable approximations, said that if this is how you are seeking it, here is a set of approximations which enable you to identify households which are poor. That is the second class of data, and if you like, some exercises have been done towards them for whatever their limitations. For example, recently we conducted the SECC census, which gave up a bunch of numbers. Its great attribute is it permits you to look at specific households and say whether they are poor or not. And you may not agree with the classification. You may not agree with the fact that they are saying if A, B, C, D are met, the household is poor. That's a separate thing, and that the analysis can use. What they did was they did an analysis and they said, by looking at the data on consumption and looking at the data on these attributes, we feel this gives us a reasonable proxy for identifying households, but it is a mechanism by which households can be identified. So the second requirement which we put on data is for policy, and as I said, in order to answer this, we need both the behavioral story and, since policy is targeted at specific groups, individuals, segments, a method by which they are identified. This partly answers the question which Kiran has read, though it doesn't answer it, it gives you an insight into it. She said, have we been able to track the problem of out-of-school children? Now remember, the out-of-school children, the numbers which you gave were descriptive numbers. They were descriptive based on sets of questions being asked in different surveys, leading to certain answers. Why are they different is a separate issue, and I'll talk about that maybe at the end. But they give you a descriptive answer. But if you now say, convert this into a policy, you need to specifically know who these out-of-school children are and how do I find them so that my policy can actually reach and respond to them. There are two ways of doing it. You can have explicit policies which seek to locate, reward or punish the children or their families or their structures for being out of school. That's one route of it. The other is you can incentivize it so that people in their ordinary course of behavior take account of those incentives and don't not go to school. One form is a mandatory clause which says if children are kept not going to school, punishments will be imposed on the households. The other could be, say, the midday meal scheme, which incentivizes parents to send children to school, both of which seek to address this problem, and they approach it differently. The third reason for which we ask for data is I have framed a policy, I'm now implementing it, and I want to know how well is it doing. This can be as the policy is being implemented for purposes of monitoring, or that's why I clubbed the third use into the same. I'm treating them equivalently, though there are differences between monitoring and evaluation. Or the policy has functioned for some time, and I want to know how did the policy do. I'm not going to get into the separate nuances between monitoring and evaluation, but these are things for which I need regular flow of data, relevant to the operation of the policy, and therefore the requirements here are even tighter than my requirements at the behavioral stage, because the data flow must be consistent with the definitions used in the policy and the objectives stated therein, and it must be in a fauna which permits me to make comparisons over time, which is a much more challenging requirement for data. So when we say we need data, or what, the correct place to ask the question is, what use do you want to put of it? Typically, we start with descriptive uses, whereas I said we have a lot of degrees of freedom and flexibility in what forms of data do we use, but we very quickly convert them into policy and monitoring purposes, assuming that the data which served us for our descriptive story will continue to serve us in the monitoring, in the policy and the monitoring objectives. It won't. And unless you pose those requirements on the data structures in the beginning, you will not be able to either frame the policy adequately or monitor it when it is being done. In order for that to happen, you must engage in a dialogue about the requirements of data as you are discussing the policy. To close, let me summarize a message which we have been delivering to virtually every policy ministry, is that when you frame a policy, please tell us what are the objective measurements by which you will measure the policy, and what indicators will you use for that purpose. Once you say, these are my objectives of the policy and I propose to measure it through A, B, C, D indicators in the actual policy document, you can immediately decide whether that is good or not. And an academic discussion can take place on whether it needs to be improved further or so on. But it's a manageable task. It is not acceptable that you framed a policy and 5 years later you say, okay, now tell me how did I do and what data do I need to know whether it worked or it didn't work. It won't happen. The data process has to be spelt out as part of the policy. The tragedy is when we frame policy or when we ask for policy, we don't state what are the measurable indicators by which that will be done. Let me give you an analog and close. During 2000, 2001, the United Nations framed the Millennium Development Goals. And it's instructive to see how this happened. The goals were placed, everybody agreed with the goals. When the goals were framed, there was absolutely no clue as to how they were to be measured. Having framed the goals, they said, guys, you guys now figure out how you want to measure them. And so the measurement people sat down looking at everything which was available to them and gave a set of indicators by which the goals would be. Now for some goals, we've come actually with reasonable measurement tools, and the measurements are in fact spot on. They describe the goal and target reasonably. There is a whole bunch of goals and targets for which the measurement are completely off the wall. They make no sense. The best example is one on gender empowerment, where the measurement is sought to be done by how many women are there in parliament. And it is a meaningless measure. Because if you look at countries which have done well on this indicator, by any number of objective criteria are the worst for gender empowerment. So clearly, just because a measure exists, I can count the number of women in parliament, it doesn't mean anything about the objective or the goal which was being stated. But that's what happened. So unless the measurement indicator is stated up front as to how you will not get any sense of whether the goal or target is meaningful or not. And yet, that's what happened then, and to a large extent will happen again. Because even now, the structure of construction of indicators is going to take place well after the goals and targets are frozen. We will construct the indicators, we will do the best job we can, given the data which is available. But whether it will satisfy everybody's objectives or we will not end up with some such indicators, as I told you in the case of empowerment of women, I can't guarantee that. It is bound to happen. The only way to stop this is to take the discussion of measurement into the issue of policy itself. Thank you. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Dr. Anand. You've given us much to think about.
Unit-wise data is available from a school to all school, and it can be aggregated at all the possible levels, such as I have mentioned, cluster, block, district, state, and the national level. So that was the year 2005-6. Thereafter, when the country launched the Right to Education Act, enacted Right to Education, we redesigned and included a large number of RT-related variables in the data capture format. That was the year 2009-10. In between, in the year 2007-8, again keeping in view the importance of timely availability of the statistics, the Government of India decided that let the coverage of DICE expanded from the current elementary level of education to the secondary level of education. The responsibility to develop such a system was also given to NUPA. At NUPA, we have designed and developed a separate system which is popularly known as, earlier it was known as SEMIS, Secondary Education Management Information System. That was continued up to the year 2011-12. But in that process, we realized later on that there is a lot of duplicity of the efforts which we are making towards strengthening of education management information system in case of school education in our country. We had a school having classes 1 to 12. In DICE, all the schools covered are given a unique 11-digit school identification code. But in that process, what happened? A school having 1 to 12 classes, for 1 to 8, a separate code was given. For 9, 10, 11, 12, another separate code was given. For 1 to 8, the offline software was there. Or for 9, 10, 11, 12, the online software was there. One data capture format was for elementary, another data capture format was the secondary level of education. One nodal officer was for the secondary, another nodal officer for the elementary level of education. So it was realized that why don't we have a unified district information system for education? In view of this, the Government of India, in its notification of 18 September 2012, decided to extend the coverage of then DICE to secondary and higher secondary level of education. Since then, DICE is now known as the Unified District Information System for Education. 2014-15, for which the current data is available, is the third year of the unification. During the year 2014-15, we could able to reach 15,16,892 schools, irrespective of the category of a school, irrespective of the management at school, whether it is boys or girls, whether it is primary or upper primary or primary with upper primary or the secondary with higher secondary, and all schools which are supposed to be having grades from 1 to 12 are supposed to be covered under Unified District Information System for Education. Even after covering more than 1.5 million schools, we are not sure whether the coverage is complete or not. So far as the government and aided schools are concerned, we are confident that the coverage is almost universal. Almost all the schools coming under the government and aided managements have already been covered under the DICE. But over a period of time, the private institutions, including the private unaided schools, it has also gone up like anything. More than 350,000 schools, 350,000 schools, they have also covered under the Unified District Information System for Education. But still we believe that the coverage is not complete because of the various regions. Across the country, there are hundreds of thousands of unrecognized schools are there. We have made no efforts in DICE to reach all these unrecognized schools. But despite this, we could able to reach about 35,000 unrecognized schools imparting school education across the country, which is just a very small percentage of the total such schools. In states like Uttar Pradesh, there is a direction from the government that let there be no coverage of unrecognized schools in Uttar Pradesh under the Unified DICE. Large number of schools are yet to be covered under the District Information System for Education. Last year, a wall of a school, unrecognized school in Noida collapsed. because of which one student, one children lost his life. All of a sudden, the Uttar Pradesh government, first the Noida administration, they have ordered that all such schools should be closed down, without even knowing how many such schools are there in Noida. In the first notification, around 25 schools were closed down. Another notification, 70 schools were closed down. At the last time when we were monitoring such schools, the total number of schools were 272. And in one order, it was said that all the children, those who were in these unrecognized schools, will be admitted to the nearby government schools. When we visited the government schools, we come to know that they are not at all. And today you will see a improvement in the consistency, coverage, dissemination, sharing, utilization of the DICE data. There are many areas of concern. Despite all these achievements, there are many areas of concern. We are aware about all these areas of concern, but still, and we are working very hard towards further improving the quality, consistency, coverage, sharing and dissemination of our data. Unless until the filled-in format is correctly filled in by the school headmaster who is the respondent, the software, kitna bhi acha ho, it is of no use. We have been engaged, we are engaged in the past also to reach the school headmasters, which is very difficult in a system where the total number of respondents are 1.5 million. We cannot reach to all them. We experimented for the last 5 years and ensured that we could able to reach through EduSet, the Gyan Darshan 2 channel. But unfortunately for the last 2 years, the Gyan Darshan channel is also off the air because of the unknown reasons. So we do not have any mode to reach our respondents. We have tried very hard in the past, and at one time, hundreds and hundreds of school respondents joined live interaction through Gyan Darshan 2, but that opportunity is also lost. Maybe now all of you sitting here can be of great help in ensuring and reaching the respondents so that the information is correctly, optimally and fully supplied by the schools. There is no reason to believe that the school headmaster or the teachers give wrong information intentionally. Many a times unintentionally, not correct information is supplied by the school. So one important areas of future strengthening of EMIS is the correct filling of the form. When we say that the correct filling of form, it doesn't mean that everywhere the information is not correctly being supplied. The situation has improved a lot like anything. The second important thing here is that in the DICE, when 2015-16 is now coming, 30th September is coming, when we start the management of 15-16 DICE, all the data capture format across the country, including 48 schools of Lakshadweep and 250,000 schools of Uttar Pradesh, they all print the data capture format from the software itself. And when they print the data capture format from the software itself, all the constant information which is not supposed to change is also printed. And this practice is being in place for the last 3 years, and in many other states across the country, and in many states for the last so many years. This has also helped us in improving the quality of data to a great extent. So the first important thing is the filling of the form. Then the statistic itself, number of variables, all the indicators, you name the indicator, you name the variable that is available in the unified DICE in ready to use form at all the levels from school to the national level. We have a set of 13 publications based on 1 year's data. State report cards in case of secondary and elementary level, flash statistics including the educational development index in case of elementary level of education and also for the secondary level of education, school education in India, district report cards volume 1 and 2, elementary education in rural India and urban India, elementary education in India thematic map, secondary education in India thematic maps, graphic presentation, and now we have also come out with elementary education in India trends, which presents data on key indicators during the period 2005-6 to 2014-15. 10 years data is available on all the key indicators on different aspects of universal elementary level of education. All these publications are available at dice.in. Our second website is schoolreportcast.in. As I have said that we have given much emphasis on dissemination of the data. Whatever we have in our server, that is also made available to the users across the world. School report cards is available in English, Hindi and 6 regional languages, both in case of secondary and higher secondary level of education, and that is also now available for the 10 years. A descriptive 2-page report including the strengths and weaknesses of each and every school is also made available at dice.in and schoolreportcards.in. All these publications are freely available. Many a times the serious users like you are not in a position to use the individual report card or individual school report card or district report card. To help to encourage further intensive research, empirical research based on DICE data, we have made available downloading of the DICE data. Till this morning, about 8,000 users from across the world, they have registered with us for downloading of the data. We do not claim that all these 8,000 users are very serious users. Many of them, they just come, see what is this, and they just went away. But we know that there are many users, those who have logged in many times, 50 times, 100 times, they must be the serious users. To further create demand and use of DICE data, last year we have launched a research program at NUPA, and we have identified 10 researchers. Professor A.B.L. Srivastav is also one of them. They have undertaken exclusive research studies based on the DICE data. And this year we are going to increase from 10 to 15 such researchers. They would be exclusively working on the DICE data. Now I raise some issues. Despite all our efforts, the goal of elementary education is still very far away. Though the GER and NER has improved, but just moving towards 100% NER will not help us in achieving the goal of universal elementary level of education. Almost 98% children are enrolled of the age group 6 to 11. But the dropout rate is still high. About 4.3% children used to drop out from primary grades or dropped out between the year 2013-14 and 14-15. If the enrollment is 131 million in classes 1 to 5, 4.15 million, 4.3% of 131 million is a huge number, absolute number. Though the dropout rate has come down, the average annual dropout rate has come down from 12% about 5 years back to 4.3% right now. But still we are not in a position to achieve the goal of universal primary level of education. Forget about the goal of universal elementary level of education. I just mentioned that just enrolling NER 100 will not help us. If we analyze the DICE data during the year 2013-14 and 14-15 and 13-14, you will able to see that there is significant decline in enrollment in primary level of education in about 20 states, 21 states, and about 8 to 10 states even in the upper primary level of education. At the one hand, every year we calculate NER, we feel happy that now we are approaching through the universal elementary level of education. But if we analyze the data, trends in the absolute enrollment, you will come to know that the enrollment in the government and aided schools is going down, has declined significantly. Now I raise very important issue for consideration of all of you. In about 21 states, the enrollment has gone down. And it is almost 2 million enrollment children dropped out from the system or declined in enrollment during the year 13-14 and 14-15. 4 years back, there was a government order in Uttar Pradesh that there should be a digitization of the photograph of each and every child which is provided the textbook. Because of the one region, officially no region was given to us. Unofficially we come to know that because of the digitization, there was a decline in enrollment of 1 million in Uttar Pradesh alone in the 4 years back in the year 2008-9. 2 years back, rather 3 years back, there was decline of about 1.8 million alone in Bihar. In Bihar, they have tried their level best to improve the attendance rate, which was only 65 to 70%. They tried for 2 years, लेकिन भैया वो कभी नहीं बढ़ा. बढ़ेगा तो तब जब बच्चा स्कूल में होगा. बच्चे का नाम 2 जगह लिखा हुआ है, कुछ फर्जी नाम चल रहे हैं. So they started tracking the child. And because of the tracking of the child, in Bihar alone, 1.8 million बच्चे कम हो गए 1 साल में. Now I come to the another story. Now, the government of Madhya Pradesh, they have introduced Samagra. In Madhya Pradesh, in education sector, there are about 23 scholarships. किसी को नहीं पता है कि कौन से स्कॉलरशिप का कौन एंटाइटलमेंट है, किसी को नहीं पता. 1.5 करोड़ बच्चा है, 2.5 करोड़ बच्चा है, नहीं 1.5 करोड़ बच्चा है. So they have introduced an online system which is known as the Samagra. In Samagra, first the family ID is created, and when the family ID is created, the members of the family is also given an ID, unique ID. So in that case, all the children of having 6 to 11 and 11 to 14, they have also received a ID which is popularly known as in Madhya Pradesh as the Samagra ID. Last year there was a difference of about 14 lakh children in Samagra and DICE. This year, between DICE and DICE 13-14 and 14-15, there is decline of 11 lakh children. The point I am raising here is that DICE reports the data, the school headmaster reports the data based on the names which are registered in the class register, school register. And in the school register, all the names, whosoever enter into the school, 5 years back, 6 years back, because of the no detention policy or because of the other reasons, they continue from one grade to another grade over a period of time. Unless until we check that one, the quality of the enrollment data is not going to improve. we seek help from all of us how to improve it. When the 5% random sample checking is done, the third party agency visit the school and again record the enrollment data. He or she is also referred the school register, and in school register everything is fine. There is perfect match between the dice and the one reported by the 5% random sample checking. The dual enrollment, the fake enrollment, the children those who have taken studying in grade in private school is also taking benefit in the government school. They all are. We cannot identify all those children. How to identify? How to tackle this one? We do not know. This is a very important issue, and because of which the questions are raised about the quality of the data, DICE data in general, and enrollment data in particular. So far as the utilization of the data is concerned, the utilization has gone up like anything. But I raise here only one issue. There are many enrollment-based indicators which need population projections. Sorry to mention here that even after 5 years of Census of India 2011, the expert committee projections of 6 to 11, 11 to 14 and 6 to 14 and also 14 to 16 and 16 to 18 population projections are not available. The final projections are not available. In the absence of this one, all our enrollment ratio, district level, block level, they are far from the real, they are not realistic one. अरे जिसको जो दिखाना है वो दिखा देता है. थोड़ा सा population projection estimates को underestimate करो, you will see that all the indicators are going up. Why we cannot approach the Census of India and request that let us provide us the child-wise projected population. In some states they use it from the household, generated from the household. Somewhere some other estimate, somewhere 10% of the last year. Number of models are being used across the country. We at NUPA projected the child population based on the 2011 actual single age population by assuming that a child of 1 will become 2, 2 will become 3, 3 will become 4, extended the diagonal, and we have provided to all the states. Many of them have now started using that one, but we now need to have the official child-wise population. When the 2001 census was made available to all of the sudden, even at all our NER, GR, they have gone down. Because we were using the unrealistic data, unrealistic estimates. Unless until the real picture, the very near to the true picture is available, all these indicators are of no use, and planning based on these indicators are meaningless. Forget about the children, those who are not in the system. This is my personal view. The out-of-school children, the study, IMRB study is being presented by Professor Srivastav Saab. My personal view is that let us focus on the students, those who are in the system. Forget about 2-3% those who are yet to be brought under the education system. Even the developed countries, all the children are not in the system. Let us concentrate on the children, those who are in the system. Let us focus on the teachers, those who are in the school. Forget about the 24% or 27% teachers those do not come to school. Why don't we focus on the teachers, those who attend the school? Why don't we come sit and see what type of training program we are arranged for the teachers? Personally, I am the view that the training programs, in-service training programs which we are imparting for the last so many years has nothing to do with the teachers. It is not need-based. It is not as per the requirement of the teacher. टीचर की रिक्वायरमेंट और कुछ है. SCRT एक आदेश दे देता है सारे हिंदुस्तान अपने डिस्ट्रिक्ट की डाइट्स को. You will conduct 3 programs, 3 days duration, 35 participants, 120 rupees per day. This is how we are developing the plan. The time has come that we should seriously sit together and develop the teachers training program. Teacher is the whole and soul and the main actor of the whole exercise. Without him or her, we cannot achieve anything. We can achieve a lot. We can be achieved only through the school headmasters and the teachers only. I just invite you here to kindly request us, rather not request us, order us to provide us the unit-wide data, we will very happy to provide you. All the unit-wide data is already available in the public domain at schoolreportscast.in. People used to say that the website is not very user-friendly. You may also face some problem. You kindly mail us. We will happy to provide you with the data. And for obtaining data, you need not to come to NUPA. A mail will only help us to ensure that we will provide you the data. Just to, in the last, I would like to say that we have two important websites. One is the schoolreportcast.in. This website in the last 1 year is visited by 4,25,752 users, and they have opened about 15,121 pages. Similarly, the another important website, dice.in, was visited by 2,98,000 visitors. They opened about 42,37,000 pages. We have reached to a number of people, those who are interested in elementary level of education, but still we have to reach many more. Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mehta. I'm sure there will be lots of questions later on. It was a very thought-provoking presentation. Dr. Srivastava, over to you.
Okay, thank you. I'm supposed to present something on the out of school children. You see, till about 2 years ago, I was in charge of this research and evaluation unit in the technical support group for Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan. And this is a group set up under the Ministry of HRD. Now, while I was there, among the several surveys that we conducted, several research studies that we carried out, this survey also has an important place. The first survey was conducted in 2006. This is the first survey in which we wanted to know how many children in the age group 6 to 14. We call it 6 to 13 because it means below 14. So in that age group, because that was the mandate that all the children in this age should go to school. And that has been not a recent one. It has been a very old stipulation. So we focused on these children. Out of these, how many are going to school? What percentage of children are going to school? So that was the first survey which was done in 2006. When we conduct the second survey was in 2009. And the third was very recent in 2014. So we already conducted 3 large-scale surveys covering all the states and all the union territories. This survey was done by, we generally select some agencies which has an all India network for collection of data. The agency we selected was IMRB. Some of this, is there anyone from IMRB here? No, I thought there will be somebody. Okay, this agency was selected in the first survey, also in the second, in the third. But it is not that we decided to have it. It was because there was an open bid. And in all the bids, they succeeded in getting the technical evaluation as well as in the financial evaluation. So there are sometimes known as IMRB surveys, popularly. The reports are brought out after each survey. Now, I'll just report some of the findings of the survey and how this selection of sampling was done briefly, because this is a household survey. So we needed a proper sample of households in rural areas as well as urban areas, and covering all the districts in all the states and UTs. Now we thought of the NSS, National Sample Survey, because they conduct these surveys every year, covering household survey. As you all know, every year they do that, and they also collect data on the educational level of the population and so on. So in other words, they do provide some data on these out of school children. I'll come to that later, but that is we use that their sample frame sampling. We use that as our basis. We did not cover all the households that they cover. We selected about 50% of those households, and that means about 100,000 households. So these 100,000 households were visited to find out whether there is a child in this age group, whether the child is going to school or not, and also whether the child never went to school or the child is a dropout and all that, some of these information. Of course, we have these data also for general population, for the SC, ST, Muslims, and so on, different categories. Now, this percentage of out-of-school children, which this survey has shown, has shown in every survey. The first time it was about 7% children who were out of school. You see, then the next survey, 2009, the percentage became about 4%. And at present, the percentage last survey was about 3%. So this is the trend that we have seen over the 3 surveys. And I'll give some more figures. So from 7 to 4 to 3% now. And in terms of numbers, the last survey shows about 60 lakhs, that means 6 million children were out of school, out of the estimated population of 204 million. Out of 204 million, 6 million. So that works out to about 3%. So this is the broad information. Now, there was for every state we have figures. This survey provided figures. The highest percentage of out-of-school children were in Odisha. That was about 6%, while all India was about 3%. That way we have figures for all the states and UTs. The male child and female child are also. There was not much difference. For the boys, it was 2.77%. For girls, it was 3.23%. Percentage a little higher in the case of girls. Similarly, urban and rural. In urban areas, the percentage was 2.54%. In rural area, it was 3.13%. So rural, of course, the percentage of out-of-school children was a little higher. Among the SC, ST, Muslims, all that, the ST had higher percentage of out-of-school children. It was 4.2%. In the previous survey, it was 4.6, so slightly less. The highest percentage was among the Muslims. That was 4.43%, while the all India average is 3% nearly. Now, again, age-wise, because we have 2 broad age groups, it is by single age wise also it's available data, but the 6 to 10 years old, which you can say corresponds to the primary education class 1 to 5, the percentage of out-of-school children was 2.77%. In the 11 to 13 age group, which corresponds to the upper primary stage, it was 3.28%. Naturally, as you grow, the percentage, because of dropouts, the percentage decreases.
Sorry, sir, can I ask you to just tell us what the definition of out of school used in this survey?
All right. The out-of-school child is generally in the definition is that when the investigator goes to the household, he finds out the age of the child, and then has he been going regularly to school? Say in the last 2 weeks he has gone to. It's not that today only or yesterday only. So it is kind of as a there is no precise definition. When in a household we can ask how many days the child has not gone and so on. It has been that whether the child has been regularly going or he has been absent for a long time. So approximately about 2 weeks was the requirement. The last 2 weeks he has gone or he has not gone. He has remained at home doing something else and not going to school. So that's how it was done. Incidentally, there is another source of data for out-of-school children, and that is National Sample Survey. But that's, this data on education is not collected in every round. There are some specific rounds in which they have very, large amount of this data. And when this survey was done, I remember in 2006 survey, or 2009 survey particularly, 2009 survey, I compared this what the NSS says in the same year or 1 year difference maybe. And we found that according to NSS, the percentage of out-of-school children was much higher. I don't remember the figure, but it was about 9-10%, something like that.
10%.
Yeah, 10%, I'm saying roughly. Now, this created a problem, and I wanted to find out. I met the Director General, the then Director General of NSS. I said, what is your methodology, how you do that and all that, and we discussed that. The methodology is broadly the same. The investigator goes there to the household, finds out whether the child has been going to school or not, and so on, and that's it. So I am still not, I have not been able to explain this wide divergence between the NSS figures and our figures.
Was it still 2 weeks they were asking?
The question, what is the question they asked? That's probably.
I think has he been going regularly to school or he has not gone to school? All right, then more precise, let's say about say last 2 weeks has gone to school or not, something like that, you know.
And did it account for only irregular students or also out of never enrolled students?
Both. The data has, the report has both. It gives information on the out of school who have never gone to school, also on the children who dropped out after class 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. So both figures are available. So this report which they published, the last report is here, published by this Excel and IMRB, which is gives detailed information for every state for all categories of children who had dropped out or who had never gone to school like that. So more detailed information is now readily available. It's in public domain, and this can be seen and this. But that puzzle still remains of the wide divergence between the NSS and this survey. We could only compare with the previous survey, and there are some validation checks also. But finally, the figures that came, which I just told you, so there is a divergence between these figures, and this survey, the last one, which shows only about 3% children are in this age group are out of school. So this is I don't know what the official figure of NSS is now, but it must be much higher than this. And this is something that needs a little bit of investigation. I tried to find out why this divergence, but I couldn't get any satisfactory answer to that. Now, I'll just tell you more about the methodology that was, sampling. As I told you already, that we had the sampling framework, the NSS, and we about took 50% in every unit, in every district, rural, urban, and all that. The rural areas, it was not difficult because village is the unit, and we select the villages and then do this. In urban area, there was some problem because urban areas, there are slums, there are other places. So we adopted the NSS strategy. That is, they have maps, and in the maps they have shown location of these areas. You can say a city or town is divided into different sectors, and then sampling of the sectors was done, which covered both urban, slums and other areas. So this approach of map was used for selecting the households in urban areas. And we procured the maps. It was not possible for us to get these maps prepared for all the urban areas. So we procured the maps from NSS itself. We asked them, they provided that these are the areas for which we want maps so that we can take our sample from those maps. So that was done. The rural areas, because we had sampled how they select the households within this village. Again, we followed the NSS strategy. That is, well, they make a map, rough sketch of where this is the street and the houses are there, so this other street and like that. So on that, same strategy was followed. The investigators were trained to do that, and then they select the households. So this way, this sampling was done, and the data was collected, analyzed. All the other detailed findings are available in the report. And I think if there are some questions, there is one handicapped children with disabilities, which calls CWSN, children with special needs. That percentage is obviously much higher, about 28%. And while according to that survey, the population of such children was about 1%. So, which may be right or not. So, I think this is all I have to present. Thank you. If you have any questions, you are welcome to.
मेडिकल ग्राउंड पे भी बच्चा जा सकता है, माइग्रेशन भी हो सकता है. 2 वीक्स का समय तो जब आरटी की थी 45 डेज, एनएसओ नया मिनिस्टर का तो 45 डेज, अभी 2 वीक्स तो बहुत शॉर्ट है.
Yeah, that's right. But then you see, if you ask for a child has been absent for 3 months or 1 month and all that, so there is a problem that they cannot say. I mean, it's broadly for absent for a long time. So at least 2 weeks, something like that. It was like that.
Thank you. We'll take questions after the last speaker has spoken. We've given enough time for that. Dr. Sekar.
Nobody has this, and that's why I'm using it. Let me start. I work with the UNESCO Institute for Statistics, which collects data from 200 member states every year. And generally, UNESCO collects official data only. Having said that, we have also started using some of the household survey to calculate some of the indicator like meanness of schooling, which was coming from other sources. Now, some of the previous discussion, like Mr. T.C. Anand has mentioned that why we need data is definitely to monitor the goal, but to meet the goal. Generally, we say that we have to monitor. Can you hear me? Okay. We collect the data to meet the goal, not monitor the goal. Sometimes we feel that we are monitoring, but largely our ultimate goal is to monitor, to meet the goal. One of the problem we are also facing that whenever country submits the data, whether it's a completeness, whether survey design was done correctly, whether data collection was, the coverage was fine, whether the methodology was applied correctly, these things we have to consider before we publish the data. That's what the process is. Now what is done? Production of internationally comparable official statistics. Maybe, like I wanted to show how it is difficult to make it international data comparable. If you see I have to see this. Exactly. Okay. One problem is, if you see in the Indian context also, education structure is different from state to state. Entry age is different from one state to the other. At the international level also, same problem we face. That's how to make international comparable. Because when you say primary level, in one country it's 1 to 4, in other country it's 1 to 5 or 1 to 7, and the entry age is different from one to other. In that case, the UNESCO has developed an international framework for data, international standard of framework. Through that, we collect data from the member state and publish it. The problem of that part is also, if you see the problem here in India, one country has a multiple system, but most of the country has one country, one system. We get data from India in a block, mentioning that it's a 6 to 10 is primary level. But if you go at the state level, it's different. When we see at the international level, it is based on international classification of education, what we call, which is the base of our data collection. And once we collect the data, like I really wanted to show you, but I don't know, it's not working. And we collect data and we also disseminate cross-nationally comparable data. And it is the only one source. Sometimes we go in the, maybe you must have collected data through World Bank website, but it will come from us. One. Second thing, we also classify it is more for higher education. Right now we are not talking we have our own publication also. Through our own publication, we also present the many types of report. For example, one of the report what we are mentioning is the India out of school children. It has also highlighted the discrepancies to count out of school children. It has a special feature of India. Leave it is now, like it's 5 minutes left. Now I come back to what Mr. T.C. Anand was saying. At the global level, when MDG or EFA was framing, the indicator and the methodology was exactly what not discussed much. But now, really it is going parallelly, especially on education. That's why whenever there was an international meeting in Incheon last month, they went together, they discussed the goal as well as the indicator. Now the government has, the international committee has formed a committee, technical advisory committee. They have also extended the advisor meeting, advisor group. India has also was supposed to participate, but we couldn't get last time participant. But the September definitely there is another meeting. That's why it's not, it shows like the situation has changed. It's not like MDG goal, how we have set the goal, how we have targeted. Now situation has changed, especially in the education. Like we also, maybe many people I can see that we also organize a consultative meeting in NUPA itself when there was a discussion on what kind of indicator it is available, what kind of indicator solve the developing countries' purpose. Then we send our comments to Montreal, our headquarters. Then based on many countries' comments and suggestions, now we have reduced to 42. It was really, really high number. But at the same time, we have to also think about the national data and international level data. International level data, the SDG has little bit of flexibility. MDG has one goal and one indicator for all developing countries or every country. Now, what we are thinking that maybe it is not relevant to make one goal and one indicator for all the countries. That's why regional ideas are coming out. So maybe the SAARC region, maybe we need a separate set of indicator than the Latin American case. But at the same time, possibly at the international level, we'll have only 10 to 14 indicators to make international comparable, but rest will go at the national as well as the regional perspective. But definitely, while choosing the indicator, we have to also think about the relevancy, alignment, and the global comparability and communicability. Sometimes we want to know many things. I give always this example. I also want to know how many left-handed head teachers are in the world. It's a good idea to know. But after getting this information, what you will do? That's why before designing the questionnaire, before designing the indicator, before designing the goal, let's think, after getting things, what kind of things we want to get out and what kind of policy analysis we want to do it. The problem is definitely lack of use of data. One is we have lot of data, but other way around we are not using. In other hand, we are saying that we have data gap. If I take example of DICE itself, so we are using all the variables at which level? Academic purpose or something different? These things, because data users are different. Micro level, we may need different set of indicators. At the meso level, maybe we need a complete different set of indicators. At the macro level, policy level, at the national level, maybe we need a separate set of indicators. This we have not, exercised much. I think this is the idea. This is the time to think about our overall education statistics system, whether it is comparable. Are we following the international comparable methodology? Sometimes, many cases, no. If I take one simple example, like out of school children, we are talking about out of school children. All the international level data, we don't include those who are enrolled in pre-primary level. But if you see the IMRB survey, And even for the NSS survey, we include it. So while comparing one country data to other country, that we have to keep in mind that what kind of methodology we have been adopted, or what methodology we have used to calculate the indicators. Sometimes misunderstanding data and their use. If I take another example, a dropout. When we say dropout, sometimes people here using dropout, comparing 4 years, 1 year, grade 1 enrollment, comparing with the grade 5 enrollment of this year. If you see, this is also called dropout. But at the international level, whatever methodology UIS has developed, it doesn't suggest country to use that kind of terminology. And the third one, I see the most important part is the capacity of those who are handling data. My experience at the state level, it's a really, really poor understanding. Even those who are, coordinating whole UDIs or DIs, their background is not a statistician, or they are more from computer background. It doesn't mean that computer background people doesn't know this thing. But I think it's a good idea to train them, whether they will understand properly what kind of indicator is useful for them, or how it can be calculated. Like I can give you some few examples. At the national level, we have not used the adjusted net enrollment rate, which is much more relevant than net enrollment rate. Same as net intake rate. Adjusted net intake rate is much more relevant than net intake rate. But we have not been using, because when we have introduced these two indicators in 2000 as a monitoring tool of EFA, we have not thought of also at the global level also. I think around 2000 we realized that it is not giving one complete picture. If I take one example why it is not giving, if we calculate the net enrollment rate, we calculate that those who are 6 to 10 age group enroll in that particular level, primary level, divided by 6 to 10 population. But some of the 6 to 10 population are also enrolled at elementary level. Our target is to provide universal education to 6 to 10 children, whether they are in primary or whether they are in lower secondary. But when you calculate only NER, you will not get that information. That's why it's a part of the duplication also. The similar way GR at the higher level, higher education and secondary education. Secondary, when you move further, then you have a two types of education, technical education and vocational, technical, vocational and the general education. Sometimes we calculate the GR based on only general education. These are some of the areas. Maybe while planning, while monitoring, this is the right time to discuss, because we are also discussing the policy making. Whether in the policy making framework, is there a monitoring framework in the policy document? Sometimes we don't include it. If I take example of many countries, they have started calling it blueprint, education blueprint, where they also include the monitoring framework. What kind of indicator they want to look at, how it will be done, and who will be responsible for this. And I always say that out of school children and the completion. Now system has changed. The completion rate we used to calculate through different way. But now there is a discussion at the global level is happening that maybe we can use completion by using education attainment data rather than participation. Actually, this graph is really interesting. Okay, it's not coming, so I can't do it. Why I say this one is very interesting, sometimes we have a tendency to say that, okay, always household survey gives higher out of school children. No. If you combine primary and lower secondary, at the global experience shows, at the primary level, yes, generally the household surveys gives higher number of out of school children, but if you go to lower secondary and combine both, largely is the same. And even for the we will provide it. It's okay. Technology didn't support. Just yeah, definitely, like we'll provide it. That's a global 27 countries data sourced as household survey and the EMI's data. In many countries, the out of school children, sometimes household survey gives higher number. In some cases, it gives lower also. That's why our question is whether we have asked the same question, the same way, applying same methodology, because sometimes purpose also difference the result. If you ask your children are not going to school, the way you ask, it will also affect your result. That's why the way you ask, the way you form the questionnaire, it also affects. That's why whenever before concluding this, we have to keep in mind that whether we are comparing with apple or something different. These things we have to keep in mind. That's not going only for the result. Results may be different, but if we can explain properly that's because of what the result is different, I think it makes a lot of sense. And I was giving example of net enrollment rate and net adjustment rate, attendance rate, household survey, and the net enrollment rate, household administrative survey. The high difference, I compare with other countries, the highest difference is in India. It's almost 5% point, more than 5. Its NAR is 84, it is in 7-8 data, and the NER is 96. In Bangladesh, it was NAR is 81 and NER is 94. In Bhutan, 92, 94, only 2 percentage point different. Pakistan, almost huge difference. NAR is 63 and NER is 87. And Sri Lanka, only 4 percentage point different. It shows like it depends what kind of methodology, the way you have presented, the way you have designed. That's why these things I really wanted to show you, but it's okay. And the whole challenge is quality of data, whether it's a consistency over the time or not, and validity and reliability, whether we are covering the same school, even it's 1.5 million school, across is only the adding, or maybe the last year there was 5 schools, out of 5, maybe only 4 have reported and additional 2 have added. These things we have to keep in mind, that's whether it's the same. And the timeliness and the punctuality, definitely this is one of the area to cover. The last part of my presentation is, if you want to improve the quality of data statistics, please use it. There is no alternative other than using it. That's why there is a cycle. If you have low quality of data, there is a weak demand, will not demand it. And once you don't demand, again, it will remain the same. That's why even it's some quality, they definitely, there is no 100%, but we have to start using it from the micro level where the data originates. Whether school is using its own data or not, my hunch is no, because they submit the data. In that case, whether they have a proper recording system or not, maybe not, or maybe yes. In that case, once we start using data from the micro level to meso to micro level, definitely, the data quality will improve. And we have identified the 5 right principle of data collection, which actually Arun was also in the team. We developed one training model. Get the right data to collect data which are relevant to the specific topic or issue. Get the data right to collect data with precise definition, appropriate methodology of measurement. Get the data right away to get the most current and timely data. Get the data the right way to get the data through a rigorous process which can guarantee data quality and ensure consistency, and get the right data management to collect reliable data which is guaranteed by good quality control conducted by related stakeholders. So these are the 5 principles of right data collection and management. Having said that, right now, like these are the principles, but sometimes we don't invest on data. That's why this is the time to generate the information, to get the data, on right time, you have to invest. Invest on what? Invest on everything, capacity building, designing, and implementing it. That's why deciding which indicator to build require a leadership, clear mandate, convening stakeholders, gaining consensus, testing indicator in coordinated way, and measurable goals. These things we have to think before you design something. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sigdel, and thank you to all the speakers. We'll open up for questions. I'm sure many people have a lot of. Please identify yourself, and we'll take them in blocks. So also tell us who the question is addressed to, and we'll take about 4 or 5 and then have answers and then start again. Yeah, at the back.
My name is Manik. This question is for Mr. Srivastav on the question of the out-of-school estimation of whether the out-of-school children are 6 million versus 11 million. And I wanted to understand again on the application of principle of getting the population statistic from the measurement of sample and getting a range of it. Okay. So please correct me if I'm wrong. The survey was done on 100,000 sample and then we extrapolate that on 200 per million, right? So in that case, we're looking at a 0.05% sample of population. Similarly, let's say NSS would have done on a 0.05. So that's like looking at a 2-liter bottle of contaminated water and assuming that and taking 1 ml each twice and assuming that the contents of both will be the same. So if my point is, if you're talking about looking at just 1 ml out of the 2-liter bottle, isn't that possible that the range of the error that we're estimating is containing both 6 million and 11 million out of school children?
Okay, next. Yeah, Anita. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. After. Oh, okay, go ahead. Then after.
So, just wanted to add to this question of out-of-school children. Only I was surprised with this figure of 6 million, and would like to bring to your notice and my observation as well with some numbers in it. These 2 figures which are quoted for out-of-school as well as in-school children are both from MHRD. It's their own survey and their own data set. And I will start with this number. And this is, well, mind you, this is definition of only 2 weeks. Had this definition been 45 days, as my friend mentioned, this number would have come down to maybe 1 million only. Then we are talking about another data set, which is net enrollment ratio, which says at the primary level, the net enrollment ratio is 88 and upper primary level it's only 72. That means 28% of the upper primary age group children are not at all enrolled. Leave about who is dropping out. If you just take out these 2 numbers and say how many children are not enrolled, this number roughly comes out to be 40 million. Because 10% children who are 20% children who are not enrolled at at elementary level, and if you have 200 million children, it comes out to be 40 million. And then the third number I would like to add to it, which is dropout rate. If you just measure the dropout rate, which is very negligible, like 4.15% in this country, but this is average annual dropout rate. And if you are calculating it at elementary level, you have to calculate it 7 times. That means 4 into 7. The dropout rate becomes 28%. And if you just calculate 28% dropout to 200 million, this figure comes out to be 56 million. I'm sure all these children who are dropping out during these 7 years are do not remain out of school forever. Some of them also come back. So even if I factor in maybe 16 million of it, again it says the figure of again 40 million or something. And just consider the transition rate. How many children do we lose while transiting from grade 5 to 6? The transition rate from primary to upper primary level is 90% or something. The enrollment in grade 5 is 2.5 crore. That means we are losing 2.5 million only while transiting from grade 5 to 6. So why are we, even talking about this 6 million number? So, and it's both government data.
Yeah.
So we have to think about it.
Yeah.
May I?
Radhika. Radhika, no, it's not you. Carry on, Radhika.
I'd like
Yeah.
to make some comments actually on the data on disability, which is the largest out-of-school children in the country, largest numbers, 28%. But the problem that we face when we are looking at data on children with special needs / disability in our country is that census, national sample survey of out-of-school children, and the DICE, they don't collect the same kind of data. For example, census will collect data on certain disabilities, DICE will omit some, and the national sample survey of out-of-school children will also omit some. So we are not able to compare data. That's one of our biggest issues. Therefore, and the other big issue that we face is how is this data being collected? When I look at data on learning disability and on low vision, it's huge. Large numbers of children on low vision. Now, these are very technical issues. My understanding from the field is that we are often, if a child has spectacles, and if we put them under low vision, then we end up, running the risk of labeling children unnecessarily also. So these are some of the big issues that we face in the disability arena, and I'd really like some comments on this. Because it's been going on for actually many, many years, and
Thank you, Radhika.
Yeah, I also want to address this issue about data, especially out of school. And I want to say that even though there are many other things which are much more complex, especially when we look at schools and what's happening inside the school, but even on this very simple notion of what is out of school, there have been major issues. And this number is, what is worrying is that when we're using almost similar households as the NSS, why should it still be a puzzle to say that we don't know why the discrepancy is so high? I remember that many years back that we had initiated through the ministry even questioning how the NSS does this, and especially the perspectives behind it. Very simply, the NSS will always give this data and then write reasons. Out of school, 30% disinterested in studies. And the first thing we asked was, how was this decided? I mean, the child can say that the studies are uninteresting, rather than the saying that the child is disinterested. And this question was raised through the ministry, that these are perspectives which are being born and which are being imposed on the family, on the child. I think this is really crucial. And whether it's 6 million or 60 million, I think the perspectives and how this is being done, that has to be addressed first, because otherwise no one is taking these numbers seriously.
I have two concerns, actually one concern. Both Dr. Anand and Dr. Sijil have mentioned these. This concern is about the whether we are going to miss the bus of sustainable development goals. You did mention that in September you are going to meet again and thrash out if possible. But I think we, including this forum, I think India government should make a strong representation there. Because if you do miss the bus, then we have to wait for another 15 years, because these goals are going to be for 2030. And I think you have rightly pointed out that their one-size-fits-all perhaps does not serve the purpose.
My name is Abhishek from Cards International. My question is to Mr. Sidgal. So Sidgal, you've spoken about, in a way, indicated towards a compromise that one would have to make when you are trying to sort of deal with the relevancy, alignment, and global compatibility. What is the nature of that compromise in your experience when you do? When you did come up with a framework for international comparison. Second question, which is also related to this, is now the dialogue vis-a-vis education and what education can do for the children as well as for the youth of the country is now being taken to the state level. Cut and public funding from the central government, centrally sponsored schemes is an evidence of that fact. What can India learn from that experience of that framework at the state level? So these are the two basic questions.
Next to you. Next to you. Okay.
Naresh Salman. Keynes once said, when the facts change, I change my mind. But I think if Keynes is exposed to the facts which are emerging in different surveys and in different reports, his mind is bound to get confused, rather be clear about how to go about it. I'm just wondering, is it because we don't have one country, one system? Is it because of lack of uniformity in the systems we follow? Education in a concurrent list? So what are the reasons which are responsible for such differences in the reports?
Yeah, yes. This is the last one.
Hi, my name is Vijayaratna. I'm from JNU, and as this my question is from Anand sir. And initially, in the first attempt, we were talking about that data has different numbers. There is like in NSS, there is different data. In CSO, there is different data. In census, there is different data. So, for example, I just want to ask how this problem can be sorted out. If I want to really see why these data is different, we know there are so many loopholes. There is a different type of measurement which has been followed. So we are talking about that it should not be there, but what are we actually doing to remove all these different collection of the measurement or whatever?
I think, yeah, can I ask the panel to respond now?
Leave some for the others, but let me see what I can take up in this. There was one gentleman who asked something about how are we taking such a small number of households or in a large population, and how can we be sure this is right? This is actually why it's important for people who engage with policy to have a basic training in statistics. The power of sampling and the fact that sampling works and when does it work is something which to a person who has not done a course or training in statistics will always be a mystery. And the amazing part about sampling is this effectiveness of a sample is unrelated to the percentage it is of the total population. This is one of the central messages which we learn when we learn sampling theory. And I wanted to start with this example because unfortunately in our education system, we train people in different fields. We train them in education, we train them in economics, but all of them work with numbers, but very few of them are trained on when and how to use the numbers. And this is something which I'm genuinely concerned about. I have argued against this in the university and I still argue about it. It's very important to be statistically literate. That's my first point. The short answer is we can generate through sampling, and the methods are known about calculating the reliability of the estimate. And anybody who's presenting survey data, you should ask them, what is the standard error of your estimate? What method have you used to calculate the standard error? And they will be able to tell you. And there are well-known statistical processes for that. I don't want to go there. There are a number of related questions, and I think it's important that when we investigate survey results, it's important to keep two things in mind. Mr. Signal Shailendra said that what question was asked is critical. Numbers will differ because the survey was asking different questions. So in NSS, we give, and when we publish our papers, we give the full schedule, instructions to the field staff. Everything behind every number is there, and we urge users to understand how the number comes about because of what question was asked. But there is something else which also people should keep in mind. Surveys are very useful for getting data, but they have certain limitations. The limitation is a survey is an outcome of an interaction between the investigator and the respondent. And it's important for the data user to understand what comes out of this interaction is determined by the understanding of what was sought to be asked by the investigator and what was sought to be answered by the respondent. They are very nice studies, and those of you who are interested in this, I can refer you to them, which have done this in small laboratory experiments in psychology departments to show you how these answers change. But in survey design, we have to be very careful in framing the question in a manner so that the answer remains comparable. We realize that this problem is there. Our essence in careful design is to ensure that the number is A, meaningful, and B, remains comparable. Now, some of these things there are no good answers to. For example, let's take the case of out of school children. So you say, is the child currently attending? The instructor can be trained to ask the question by saying, all right. Parent may say, what is the meaning to this? You can say, did he go today? That gives you one answer. Has he been going over the last week, 2 weeks, 6 weeks? Which one to use is something for you people to sort out. But once that is communicated to the investigator, the answer will depend upon which one he asked. And the estimates will differ according to whether he... What is important is for you to know whether, when you are comparing across surveys, whether the same question was asked in exactly the same. If not, the two numbers are not comparable. But there's another problem with surveys. Automatically comparable. Let me give you another source of non-comparability and why design is so important. Many users of the survey simply look, and particularly NSS type surveys, which are stratified designs, by looking only at the bottom line, 100,000 households were visited or so many thousand people were visited. Unfortunately, in stratified design, that does not lead to comparability. It's how the stratification was done, what was the distribution of households in different strata. Unless those are chosen in a manner to maintain comparability, the estimates will again not be comparable. My point is, once you get two different numbers, to sort of say, something is wrong, is actually the wrong end of the stick to ask the question. In fact, our emphasis is that care must be taken from the beginning when a survey is conceptualized, that you take the necessary steps to ensure comparability. One reason why NSS surveys have attained a certain level of credibility amongst a wide community of users is because of a whole set of practices which are communicated about how comparability is maintained, both in the design of the instruments, the sampling framework, the methodology, the concepts and definitions, and the dissemination practices cover not just the results but all of that. Now, the message which is important for the users to communicate and ask from agencies which give you surveys is, don't just ask for the results, ask for everything. Ask for the schedule, ask for the sampling design, and ask for the training material which was given to the instructor, investigator. All of that will help you understand what the answer to the survey is. I'm telling you this because this part of a survey is what, when you say, I don't understand what has happened, I may not be able to answer it, but when I document all the differences, I will have a reason to understand the differences. I may not still be able to pin the differences down. Finally, and I want to close with this point, surveys can't answer everything. I told you a survey is a very specialized interaction between an investigator and a respondent. The capabilities of these two jointly define what a survey can at best measure. It's important to keep this in mind when we put requirements on surveys and on censuses. The survey is slightly better off than a census because you can control the investigator a little more. In a census, you can control him even less. Reason is, in a survey, we will use maybe at best 600-700 investigators. In a census, we will use lakhs of investigators. It's very hard to get the same degree of uniformity of understanding when you're working with 2 lakh investigators as against when you're working with 700. But even 700 investigators is a lot more than 40 people or 100 people in this room. The 100 people in this room may be all postgraduates. The investigator typically will just be a graduate. In the census, he may not even be that. In many censuses now, because of the embargo of RTE, you can't use school teachers, so they're very often sometimes higher secondary pass, sometimes barely graduates. So this understanding of what can be captured in that investigator respondent interaction should limit you to ask what data should be sought. That's what you can do with surveys and censuses. There are other sources of data. The DICE example gives you an alternative administrative source of data. But we have not yet paid attention, and as he rightly, I'm not going to go into this further, as to how should we resolve these quality issues in administrative data.
Dr. Mehta, do you want to Dr. Srivastava to comment?
Yeah, I think lots of questions on this out of school education survey. I think just 2-3 points that emerge is that definition of out of school, and I explained that it is there, and this is, one cannot say precise that, well, the child has gone for so many days exactly. If it is more than 15, he is out of school. If it is less than, so there is some vagueness there. I will agree that. I discussed this issue, as I told you, with the DG of the NSS at that time, and it's a methodology. What do you do? What do you tell the investigator? What we did, and I tried to see what could be the difference. I couldn't find any serious difference in the approach to that, you know. So still, that's why it still remained a little bit of puzzle. What we did, that we compared the result with another survey, which is, as you may be knowing, family health survey, which is conducted, and we took that also, and because along with many other things, they also collect data on this, and we found our figures were very close to their figures. So this again, you know, I mean, we were a bit reassured that we are not very much wrong in that. The DICE figures of out of school, there are no such figures of out of school in DICE. But enrollment ratio that give, age specific, sorry, they don't give that. The nation, NER, net enrollment ratio, GER, gross enrollment ratio, these are, GER is very poor indicator. I don't know why it is so widely used. Then NER is better, and actual is ASER, age is specific enrollment ratio. And the NSS, by the way, don't use the word enrollment. Because enrollment is school specific term. They say age is specific attendance ratio. Child attends the school or doesn't attend the school. So that's why there is I mean, some problem in comparability because of that also. But otherwise, it's I mean, not serious difference. Dr. Anand has talked about that, how you collect the data and how you ask the question. Yes, that's very true. Even a little difference in asking the question makes a lot of difference, you know. So if it is a negative connotation, then the answer is different. I just remember an example which is quoted in some books also, that is in China, many years ago, they had a census for conscription of the, I mean, young people who should be still recruited for the army. They got some figures. After some time, there was another survey where this was for who are eligible for ration cards. and there also the same enumeration are done, and as you can imagine, there is wide difference between the figures of two surveys. Because there the purpose of the more people want to say, they want ration card, and they want less people to get it. So this kind of the very purpose of survey, how you ask the question, all this makes a lot of difference. And so it's very important to ensure uniformity if across surveys. If there are repeat surveys, the same survey is being done after some gap, then the uniformity has to be maintained in definition. That is true. When you talk of dropouts, say DICE or any such source, the dropout is the one who was enrolled in school but is no longer in school. So is dropped out. So that is why this definitely it is related to enrollment in the school itself. So this is the major issue. I don't know if I omitted anything. Yeah, about disability, the percentage right here. In this disability-wise figures are also given. It's not only this. They have the data on mental disability, visual disability, hearing disability, speech disability. For all these separate figures are available for our students. And so, of course, the samples of these categories are not very large, but whatever samples they have, those figures are also disability-wise figures are also available. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say. If there is anything, I will cover.
Let me start from whatever Mr. P.C.R. said. Exactly, one part to make it data reliable, you have to start using it. But before you use it, it would be good to have an idea that how it has been collected, what was the like a question asked, how it works, and who was the responsible, how it was designed, what was the purpose of something. If I take one simple example for out of school children, the same way, we use NSSO 7-8 and 12-13, 11-12, because the objective was different. NSSO 7-8 was education, other was different. But there was a question. The second one round has also a question on education. When we compared, it gave us a completely different picture. That's why we have to also keep in mind that what was the main purpose of the survey. These things and the definition is equally important. Coming back to goal and SDG, definitely now it's dialogue is going on. The September meeting on the indicator, there is a technical advisory group. Now they have extended it. It is led by UNESCO, but in part of the UNESCO, there's a World Bank is there, UNICEF is there, other international agency also there. But now they have extended to the member state. It was not there, the member state. But before finishing also, the member state will have a lot of things to say. That's why definitely maybe the regional ideas are coming up. The second thing our colleague here said, the compromise, what we can learn from global. One of the interesting things in educational statistics, it has three domains. One is household, one is administrative, other we have not discussed here, is the learning assessment, which is completely different. If you see all the international level data, you will not get internationally comparable learning assessment data at all. Why? The framework is different from one country to other. You are comparing sometimes the PISA, because PISA has covered few countries, and Africa there is another, say that's the SACMEC. In Latin America, they PAUL. There are many agencies are working to make it international data comparable. What India can learn is many ways how we can make it more internationally comparable methodologies. For example, if I take another example, definition of literacy, how to define it. Are we following the same definition of literacy which UNESCO has defined, or maybe we have gone further, differently? And the other one was the confusing. I remember Varghese, whenever he used to teach us, saying that, are you confused? And when we say yes, now we are in the right track. It means whenever you are confused, it means you have an interest to look at why it is, differences. One of the difference, why it is happening, that maybe we have not used evidences enough for the planning purposes and targeting purposes. One. Second, what I see, the capacity is really low. My experience at the subnational level is really low, especially on education statistics. Even people have maybe the graduated or master's degree doesn't know the difference between GR and NER. That's why the capacity of using evidences, particularly focusing on the educational indicator, is the essential one, even at this level. If I start doing a quiz here, maybe maybe we'll have a different answer, because I have asked one question: what's the difference between sex ratio and gender parity index? People have a different opinion. Where we can use the terminology GPI and where you can't use the terminology GPI and you have to use sex ratio is different. But sometimes we get mixed up. These are the way we can enhance the capacity from the bottom, from the data providers itself, for administrative data, for other definitely the surveyor and the user. So we understand data properly and we use. Definitely we have to use to enhance the capacity of the users as well as to enhance the quality of the collected data.
So far as DICE is concerned, we do not collect any information about the dropouts as such. We use 2 years grade-wise data, grade-wise enrollment, 2 consecutive years, and 1 year repeaters data, and by using the reconstructed cohort method, we come out and publish average annual dropout rate at primary level and separately for the upper primary level. That is the one. In addition to this, we also disseminate retention rate at the grade 5 and retention rate at the grade 8. So that is based on the 5 years data, and repeaters are subtracted. The third one is transition rate from primary to upper primary level of education and from elementary to secondary level of education. It was also said that we should also compute gross completion rate. In fact, we are already doing it. It is part of our flash statistics. The another indicator which is mentioned here is adjusted net enrollment ratio and adjusted gross entry rate and all these indicators and many more. Practically all the indicators which are efficiently required for formulation and monitoring and planning for elementary level of education can be generated by using the DICE data. It is also said that one must use the data. That is fine. I take this opportunity and highlight the issue here is that we had the EFA goals, we have the global monitoring indicators and many other indicators. For example, so far as the EFA goals are concerned, the EFA monitoring, the EFA just before a decade is over, we analyze how much progress we have done. And then there is a midway analysis how much we have progressed. Generally, all these exercises are done only at the national level. Not even the state level officers are involved, forget about the district level officers. We have done large number of indicators. You just say that even in this all people will not able to differentiate GER and NER, differentiate between the average annual dropout rate and transition rate and retention rate. That is fine. But those who are involved, the targets, the EFA goals, the monitoring goals, they remain at the national level. And every year, every decade, we analyze them. This is because of the fact that targets are never fixed. Even if they are fixed at the national level. We do not have any disaggregated figures. Without involvement of the officers working at the grassroots level, block level, district level, state level, how we will popularize all the EFA or UNESCO or UAS indicators? This is just impossible. We have some goals at the national level, but at the state level, even people, those who are involved in elementary and school education, they are not at all aware about all these indicators, forget about the district level. Unless until the awareness is created amongst all the stakeholders, those who are involved in efficient formulation of the plans, we are not going to achieve. This is just an exercise. That's all.
Thank you, Dr. Mehta. I think on that note, I'd like to thank all the speakers for making very thought-provoking presentations. Lots of questions have been raised, I think very valid questions. I'm glad that everybody has spoken frankly about the challenges that exist. And I hope that through the day we can sort of revisit some of these questions in more discussions and in the rest of the conversations that take place. I think we're already running late for tea, so we'll break for tea right now and then come back in about 20 minutes. 10 minutes, okay, sorry.